Mm-hmm. Yeah, I went and found a media guy who converted it over to a disc, and so the principal and the preacher and the I think the athletic, no, not the athletic director, but the superintendent, all were speaking at this. I mean, it's right there and it's a really an amazing service, and some of it is in here. The quote, one of the guys was quoting about the leave your footprints in the sand of time. That's in the book.
Where's your dad buried?
Paris,
So okay.
Paris, Texas.
What was the editing process like?
Pretty exciting. I had a lady who helped me kind of go through and help the flow of the book kind of while I was writing and towards the end of it. But A&M, after they had approved it and so forth, they sent me to a copy editor who was a lady out of Chicago. Margaret Kerboth, I'm pretty sure is her name. First time I talked to her, she said, well, I've got to tell you, I've never watched a football game. So, that's what you call an oh crap moment. And so we talked about that a little bit, and we.
Make it good for people who weren't particularly interested in football, though.
Well, it did. It really brought it to, because I'll tell you a couple of stories about what we, and I've heard an editor talking on the radio one day, and he's saying, well, my job is just arguing with authors. That's all I do is argue with authors. So that's kind of what we did, but in a nice way. But we don't go, but she did help bring it to a level where somebody doesn't know anything about football would be okay. With maybe one exception, we were talking about a game and that Bowie was playing, and they were playing, I think, in Snyder, and talking about a situation, and this happened and that happened, and all of a sudden it was 3rd and long. And she called me up. She said, we haven't talked about this character long yet. Don't we need to capitalize his name? That is verbatim what she said. And I said, well, 3rd and long is a whole lot more difficult to explain if you don't have a good passing game. So, but at the end, she told me that, there are a lot of things she tried to do, and she was really good. It really was one of the most interesting parts of this thing. It really was, because we evaluate every chapter, every paragraph, every sentence, every period, every comma, everything. We even edited in between the lines, so it was really interesting. But at one point at the end, she said that she has a new appreciation for football, and her husband promised that he's going to take her to a football game.
Games. You said that it took you 8 years to finish the book.
Mm-hmm.
During that time frame, you interviewed so many players, coaches, and others that knew your dad. Did you find that whole process was therapeutic to you?
Yeah. Yeah, it was really amazing. There's so many connections that are, and there are not a whole lot of those 95-year-old people still alive anymore, but there's so many connections that I found, and this guy, and they told me, so it was really good. It was really amazing for me. And then even after the book came out, especially after the book came out, a guy called me, let me back up, talking to one of these players, some of these players, and they said, your coach, your dad was a really good coach, and he made all the coaches below him, meaning the B team coach and the junior high coaches, run the same system, and they all had to run the same offense, and if they didn't, he'd fire them. And the reason, they'd go, and after every game, every week, they'd go and look at the films, and they'd all critique each other in the game. So it was really an interesting process. But evidently, one guy didn't run the offense, he got fired. Well, after the book comes out, I got a letter from some guy. He said, I coach with your dad, and I sent him, or he had his phone number. I called him, and it was Coach Higgins, and he was the coach that got fired. He didn't say anything about that, though. But he talked about what good friends they were, and he had run this offense and blah blah blah. But anyway, the point is, people have been coming out of the woodwork that knew my dad or that knew my mom. So it's an ongoing process.
How many people did you interview?
At least 100.
Explain that.
Well, of course, all my family and all the friends I could find. And there were probably 6 or 8 people that still played that had played on his high school team. Probably 12 or 15 guys who had played on his Texas A&M team that played at A&M with him. And then probably 50 or more players from A&M, or players from El Paso that were his high school players. And I talked to 6 or 8 kids from Luling, which was kind of hard to find those guys. But I mean, I was looking for something bad because there was, I guess in a book you're supposed to have some tension or something, and I couldn't find anything bad. So it was amazing. And
did you get all of it video or audio?
a lot of them a lot of those Hispanic kids I have video. And some of the people I talked to, I'll dig a little deeper with that. One of them was one of my heroes, who's Raymond Barry. His dad has been my dad's coach, and Raymond Barry was 6 or 7 years old when my dad was playing. And in a small town, all the people in town look up to the high school football players. Well, he was one of those kids, and he told me that my dad was one of his heroes. And I said, well, that's interesting because you were one of mine, and I think your dad's was one of my dad's heroes. But so him and Nolan Richardson and Gene Stahl, I talked to some really amazing people about this, and they're all just Nolan Richardson had been in 8th grade, and when I first called him, I said, Nolan Richardson went to Bowie High School. But he was at Bowie Junior High School when my dad was coaching, and I called him up, and he said, oh yeah, I know exactly who that was. I really was disappointed I didn't get to play for him. We all admired him. I mean, he just went on and on and on about, right off the top of his head, who Buryl Baty was. It's amazing.
You might tell who Nolan Richardson is for those who don't know.
Nolan Richardson is the national championship basketball coach from Arkansas. I don't know if he was the first black national championship coach, but NCAA, actually, he won. He's the only coach to win NCAA championship, a junior college championship, and then what's the level in between? He coached at Tulsa and won the national championship there. That's not, at the time, wasn't it? So this guy's a big-time coach, and he's just rolling out there about how much he admired Coach Baty.
You also interviewed someone that served in the army with him, right?
Yeah, I did. Jackie, my daughter, I knew that he had served in this military unit. So Jackie got on the internet and found a couple or 3 people that were still alive that were in this unit. And one of them was a guy who had played a part in Our Gang, the old Our Gang series in California. And he was out in California. He had been fishing that day when I talked to him. But one of them was a guy in Louisiana, Sam Cornsweat. And he was one of his best friends. And he said, oh, yeah, I remember him. I went to his wedding, and they were stationed in a camp outside of Paris. And said he married Betty Jo Hutchinson. And I mean, he just rattled off stuff that they did in the military. It was really interesting. I have a diary from what they did in the military too. So it really helped to kind of fill that part.
The baby what?
Oh, he was I don't know if he was a sergeant of this unit. And there's a picture. I have a lot of pictures of the military when he was there. And one of the pictures, there's a sign there that says Baty's Bastards. I guess that's what they call themselves.
What? I missed it.
In the military, he was a sergeant of a unit, and at the camp, there was a picture of the camp with this sign that was painted on there, Baty's Bastards, in World War II. Yeah. Yeah. So, anything else?
In Gaines's typical humble way, he doesn't mention that he also created a foundation in his mother's name, and for 6 years or so, he raises money for girls that are alumni out of South Garland High School to help them kick off their college careers. And that's Baty Hudson Scholarship Foundation or something like that.
Mhm. There's a website, Betty Hudson Memorial Scholarship. Thank you, Jim.
Happens
all of
toward
you.
the